Happy Monday. Today on the news and why it matters. Remember those undercover Planned Parenthood videos showing all of these people talking about selling baby parts, and everyone said, no, stop, those are just altered. Yeah, it turns out that they weren't. Also, Google facing an antitrust investigation by now 50 attorneys general. Got a lot to get into, and it starts right now. Welcome to the news and why it matters. I am Sarah Gonzalez, today joined by Glenn Beck, Stu Burgier, and Jason Howerton, our social media guru. I feel like I always have to give you that.
I mean, that's not what's officially my title, but I like it better than what it is.
We're changing it. We're changing it. It has changed. Before we get into the conversation, want to thank our sponsor, American Financing. Glenn, I know you were hesitant to deal with them.
No, I was hesitant to deal with anybody because, I mean, Stu remembers, before the crash, I was absolutely alone. And I had people telling me at the highest levels, oh, there's not a problem. There'll never be a problem. Until that night, right before they announced TARP, and somebody at the highest level called me and said, oh boy, it's trouble beyond belief. And I'm like, really? And so I was not a fan of any banks. These guys are not banks. These guys work for you. They don't get kickbacks from the banks or anything else. They're all salary employed. And this is a family-owned and operated business. I've known them for over 10 years. They're great. They're not going to get you into loans that you shouldn't have, and they will help you with all the fine print. They're the people that will really, truly help you. Make sure you do the financially correct and responsible thing. It's American Financing.
You can go to AmericanFinancing.net, or you can call 800-906-2440. So what year was this that this came out, that there were all of these undercover videos with Planned Parenthood? I want to say it was like 2015?
I think it was 15 or 16, it feels like.
Yeah.
It's been a while. Yeah,
it's been a really long time. And the people who uncovered this and released the videos are, of course, in trial, because that's what we want to do. We want to put the people on trial who are showing us all of these terrible things are happening.
Imagine the hubris that it takes to be caught on tape and then saying, now we're going to take you to trial and prove that this isn't true when it is indeed true. Imagine the hubris. And what happened last week, and this is, well, I've got a few questions and comments on the media. But what happened last week in a court of law in San Francisco, so these are court documents now, the CEO of StemExpress admits to selling beating hearts, intact heads of aborted babies. Now listen to this. They admitted to in the preliminary hearing that the baby's head could be procured attached to the baby's body or could be torn away. That is an especially gruesome admission, and it begs the question, how did they get these fully intact human children? The attorneys are asking this question. If you have a fetus with an intact head and an intact body and intact extremities, that is something that would indicate that the child was born alive and then the organs cut out of that child, or the child was the victim of an illegal partial birth abortion. Both of these are gruesome, illegal, and violent acts. So here's my question. The media said that all of this stuff was selective editing. It wasn't. You now have the CEO admitting of getting beating hearts and digging it out of the child's chest. It's worse than what they had on video, I think. Would you agree with that? So the media said it was selective editing. Where's the media today correcting that? When will the media actually ever say anything? How come the media doesn't have a single story out? You have to find this on Christian news sites. There is not a single news story from any legitimate big news organization. And when will Snopes stop denying this? Snopes is saying that this was hacked video and selectively edited. When will Snopes change that and say, no, actually in a court of law, they testified that it did happen?
Yeah, Stu.
It strikes me as really all they have here is an optics problem, right? If you're in the abortion industry and you believe that what we are doing here is not murder, who cares if there's a beating heart that's being sold? Who cares if a head is being sold? A head of what? Lettuce? It's nothing. It's just, it has no life, right? And the problem with this is it forces them to admit what's actually occurring here. And that's why they are fighting it so hard. But, you know, like they can claim all the medical use and all these things that, you know, may or may not have positive outcomes if you believe that this is not a human being. But the end of the day is why they fight these particular things so hard is they don't want to actually have to admit what's going on.
But it's interesting to me that that's what they were fighting for, the actual birth of a live child and then killing it after birth. They're fighting for that in New York. That's what the Virginia governor was saying. And they keep denying it and denying it. Well, this shows that somehow or another, it's either partial birth or that child is born alive and then they kill it. They're just trying to legalize what they're already doing now, it appears.
Jason, you look like you're having a hard time digesting this.
Well, I was actually thinking about my own unborn child right now who is in the womb. But really what I was more thinking about is with Planned Parenthood, they repeat over and over again that abortion is not their main thing. It's not why they exist. It's 3%, which is a debunked percent, by the way. You know, if you take just a small percentage, the average of what it costs for an abortion, they performed, I think it was something like, I think I have it right here, 332,757 abortions that are on the books in 2017 and 18. You just do the average, just what it costs for an abortion, so it'll probably be much higher in real life. You're looking at over 200 million a year just on the books abortion. That is a lot of money. That's why they can say no to Title X funding with no problem, because they know that's their business model. And that doesn't even include the black market selling of the baby heads and the baby parts and everything else that they're reportedly doing behind the scenes. To me, that is where I think you have this really ugly nightmare mix of two things. You have motivation by money, and then you have the devaluing of human life. And when you put those things together, I think that's how you easily get to what Glenn is reading right there. And it's that we are not more outraged as a nation and more unified in this is kind of a depressing thing to me. It seems like such an open and shut thing that
it's the end of our republic. We are so far off the track of our covenant that the Pilgrims made, Columbus made, George Washington made, Abraham Lincoln made. We all made a covenant. And that's why we have been so blessed. We are now on the opposite side. Our apathy is silence in the face of evil is evil itself. We are on the opposite side of what we should be fighting for. I haven't heard anybody talk about Hong Kong and those people who are going to be enslaved. I'm not saying that we should go rescue them or whatever, but it's bothered me all day. I haven't heard anybody talking about this. I hear the Sharpie talk about the stupid map all weekend long. That's all I heard of. We are going to pay a grave, grave price.
Well, and to add to your point, Glenn, about the media just largely being silent on this, they're not talking about this trial that's going on and the horrific things that are being uncovered. What they are doing is AP published a video today of a girl who had an abortion across state lines at 26 weeks, and this is how they are telling her story. Watch.
What I would learn the hard way is when you first stop taking birth control, that first couple weeks, that first few days, you're your most fertile. So I got pregnant in early February. I was housing insecure at the time. I had just started a job. I didn't have any support. I didn't have any health care. They said that they would be able to help me, but I had to get there before I turned 28 weeks. And so I had less than 10 days. It's not a decision to be made lightly, because on top of, I didn't make it lightly, because it was on top of a large emotional turning point decision to make in my life. It was a large financial decision to make. If I can give back to people the one thing that I wanted more than anything when I was going through this, then my work is, then I'm done what I've set out to do. Like my work is done.
So she's the victim.
Yeah, I'm confused. Why was it emotional? What was such a? Why was it
Seriously,
an
if it's
emotional
like
decision?
having a wart removed or a skin tag or whatever it is, why is it emotional?
Yeah, it shouldn't have any emotion tied to it at all. If it has any emotion tied to it, you better investigate that, because what you're saying is you're ending a life, and that's why you're feeling emotional. You should explore those feelings a little bit. If you can come out on the idea that, at the end of the day, if your calculations bring you to the idea that, should not be an emotional situation, it's no big deal, then at least you have some sort of internal justification, I suppose, for doing what you're doing. But if you're admitting it's emotional, why on earth are you doing this?
Isn't that why the new thing to do is to celebrate, right?
Shout your abortion.
Celebrate it, because it's nothing to be. But I think you can ask, if you're asking anybody honestly, there's a reason why women who have abortions, it's hard for them, and they're emotional about it for a reason, because you can't override that biology with even the greatest taglines or greatest social media videos, or Michelle Wolf doing a parade about how awesome abortion is. It just doesn't change it.
It's why Germans still don't talk about things in their own household that happened with grandma and grandpa during World War II. They don't talk about it. They never have openly talked about it in their own households, because grandma and grandpa had to be monsters. They had to be monsters, because if they were involved at all in eugenics of gassing children, and they somehow or another shut all of their senses down and said, no, it's good for the nation, it's good for progress, that either emotionally impacted them to a place to where they went dead inside, but we know that it impacted the rest of the family to where they didn't want to talk about grandma and grandpa about that, because they become monsters. Mm-hmm. At some point, this is going to come undone. And my gosh, we are just going to be remembered as...
With the media too, what happens in these circles with the media is they feel... They get in these echo chambers, and they talk about this issue all the time, and they're all on the same page. And when something like this happens with what you're seeing in the court documents, by coming out and saying that's wrong, all of a sudden now their colleagues, their echo chamber turns on them as somehow being against women's health or attacking women's health or women's health care. And so that's where this silence comes from. I think there's a lot of people who agree that is horrifying, and in their heart of hearts would say that's wrong, but make a conscious decision to stay silent because of that. It's the same
thing, and it's why calling people baby killers and things like that doesn't work. Ilhan Omar is an example of this. I was shocked. She said that I was a monster for saying all these, things, that she doesn't love the country, and so I said, well, let me just ask you 15 questions. Just ask 15 questions in a Twitter storm.
By the way, when I see your tweets and I see 1 of 15, I never know how it's going to go. So I followed it and I was like, okay, that's pretty good.
So I do the 15 questions that she has to answer, and if you've noticed, anybody supporting her, only name calling. Yep. Those were all reasonable questions. Those were not. I said in one of them, we should clear this up. If this isn't true, we should clear this up, and we have to correct the record now because it's an injustice. But they don't say anything. That's the problem. No one is willing to look at the facts of anything. And so we are now just going down this road of insanity to where we should be able to say, okay, well, this is my point of view. What are the facts that you have? And then argue and talk about the facts. Instead, we are, you want to talk about abortion. You'll never get to the facts. You'll never get to the heart of it, because nobody really wants to go there.
Well, even people who, I think Eric Swalwell is a good example of this. We'll talk about stuff in DMs, and we'll be.
That's so weird, Jason.
I know it is, and we'll be cordial, and we'll
random.
talk about guns. Like we're obviously on completely different planets, but then as soon as it's like, let's talk publicly.
Right.
Then all of a sudden it's like, no, we can't do that, because then we have to be actual enemies.
That's why.
And then the name calling comes out.
Yeah. That's why people like Jason Blum last week from Blumhouse,
That was awesome.
meeting me in public and saying that. I mean, he said to me,
Posting about it.
I know, and
I was shocked.
He said to me, Glenn, so what can we do together? I mean, something big. What can we do? And I said, let's go free some slaves. And he said, I love it. How do you mean?
Sounds good.
Yeah, sounds good. And I said, right? Now, who's against that? And so we're going to go do something very, very public together. And he wants to make a point. My side is cool with it. Our side is generally cool with people who are like, cool. Yes. You know, hey, I have a different opinion. Great, let's do something. Their side is not. And he wants to make a very big deal out of standing with people and saying, look, I don't agree with him on everything, but I think he's a decent human being.
Yeah.
If we can get back to that, we're okay.
Stu, last word on this. To go to break.
Yeah, I mean, I just, I'm totally for changing the laws around abortion, but the more you think about it, the more you realize that's just not the end solution. I mean, there'll always be a way around it, just like with guns, right? Like they will let you drive across state lines. They will import pills, abortion pills from other countries.
New York is funding it.
Yeah, New York is now funding $250,000 to bring in 500 people who don't have the money for their abortion in their state or in case it gets banned. The bottom line is it has to be a change of people's hearts. You listen to those undercover videos, what's shocking is not necessarily as much about like talking about beating hearts, and obviously that's the headline, but it's how flippant they are about it. It's transactional. It's how many textiles are coming in tomorrow. And that's the same way you can imagine going back to the 1700s and hearing people talk about buying and selling African Americans. Like it was slavery. It was the same way they talked about it. It was transactional. It was a buying and selling of a thing. And here it's the same way. And until that changes, it is really a mindset change that ends this process, hopefully forever. But I mean, it's hard to be optimistic about it at times. I mean, you certainly pursue the legal ends, but it's bigger than that.
Yeah. All right, back in a minute.
We should look up what they said about slaves not being people.
Before we get back into the conversation, I want to thank our sponsor, Relief Factor, which we here at BlazeTV love because it makes Glenn way more tolerable.
I don't think that's necessary.
Is that their tagline now? Why is it? It does seem...
It'll make your boss happy. If your boss is in pain a lot. And I was in such bad pain over the last, almost 10 years that I could get very, very grumpy. And it wasn't something that I liked, and neither did anybody else. Started taking Relief Factor because my wife forced me, because I just didn't think it would work because, it takes horse tranquilizers to keep me under during surgery. What is something that's, natural and doesn't have any drugs? It's not going to help. It did, and no one was more surprised than me. I still take it 3 times a day, and it's helped me do this without any pain. Try it, please. Get your life back. Go to relieffactor.com. Try their quick start, their 3-week quick start trial. The phone number is at the bottom of the screen, I'm sure. Relieffactor.com.
So Google is now under antitrust investigation by 50, as of the time of this taping, 50 attorneys general now.
No, not 50 attorney general. They have filed 50 suits. I think there are 30, I don't remember how many attorney generals. So it's not all states, but it is 50 lawsuits. And I think there are many states that might even join this. New York is going after, I think, Facebook and Google. The New York Attorney General is actually going after, leading the tribe, if you will, of all these attorney generals on Facebook, and our own Ken Paxton here in Texas is the one leading the charge against Google. And Ken and I'm actually going alligator hunting with a bunch of attorney generals in the next few.
Yeah.
I know, it's crazy.
Very normal.
Yeah, a bunch of attorney generals called me up and said, "You want to go alligator hunting?" And I said, "Is it Google?" And they said, "No, actual alligator hunting." And I said, "As long as I don't have to swim down into the lake to get it after we kill it, sure." But these guys, I've talked to them extensively about Google and what's happening. They are serious about it. What I'm afraid of, the Department of Justice is also going after Google, and they announced another antitrust lawsuit today from the federal government. I am really worried about the federal government because they are already in bed with Google. They're talking about even going further on surveillance with Google and Amazon and Apple. And I don't trust the federal government, but I do hope that these states make a mark, leave a dent.
You know what made me nervous is when Mark Zuckerberg was testifying and they brought up the idea of federal oversight or regulation. He was like, yeah. And like to me, I was like, wait a minute, why do you want to be in bed with?
He'll be their top advisor.
Right. It makes, they make the rules. And on top of that, what those rules usually mean is you become so top heavy with regulation that the guy in the garage can't afford to have all those attorneys do all the paperwork. So competition dries up.
I don't like that.
Nice and easy. Yeah, no, I mean, you never see government take something like this seriously until it starts, challenging their power, right? And the government now, because you see this, it's not just from the left, it's from the right as well. It's both sides are going after these big tech companies, and it's because they are now seeing how powerful they are, and it's time to rein that power back. There are good things that can happen. Look, if someone breaks a law, they should be under the same sorts of rules and ramifications that all of us face, right? When you're starting a business, they should, if they're doing things that are illegal, they should be punished for them. That being said, though, I do worry about an increased appetite for regulation on these companies from conservatives, especially, because at least
regulation will be the death of us.
Yeah, I mean, it
will be the death of us.
You see it all over the place, man. I mean, like Elizabeth Warren's essentially campaigning. It's like one of her main campaign issues. And when Elizabeth Warren and figures on the right are coming together to agree on something, like
it's
most people are
really
like, hey,
good.
bipartisanship, great. No, it's almost never good.
Why do we have such short memories? Like, Obama was just in office.
Yep.
And it was like, can you imagine giving him that power over?
It's tribalism.
It's crazy to me.
Tribalism.
Like, I don't, because, I mean, what if Trump loses in 2020? And then all of a sudden you've got Bernie Sanders in charge of the tech sector? Like, what is happening?
This is something that Stu and I talked about this morning. I'm going to do a special, hopefully in the first quarter of next year, on this. It's 1984, Brave New World, and the Book of Revelation.
At the same time.
They're all coming. And people don't understand. I really think, and I don't know this is just me, but I think in the research that I've done, I think we're about 2 years away from not being able to turn it around. For instance, I don't know if you read this, but the CEO of iRobot, which makes Roomba.
Oh my gosh. I heard you on radio this morning. It's terrifying.
They're selling the maps of your home. I don't even know who's buying it. But that information of where everything is in your apartment or your home. Yes.
Isn't that terrifying?
And everything is being, just read today, Google Nest. We argued about this forever when Google Nest came out. And my argument was didn't even scratch the surface. I was worried about the global warming people saying, oh, well, we got to have everybody's. No.
I mean, you're the thermostat, right?
The thermostat, Nest.
Mm-hmm. Because Nest has cameras now, too.
Right. Nest is now watching you. They're now listening to you. It's now communicating with some even beds. Now, Sleep Comfort, the bed, I love Sleep Comfort bed, okay? The Sleep Number adjustable bed. It's now advanced to where it's all smart technology. So it monitors your breathing. It monitors your heart rate. It monitors everything about you. Then it connects to Nest to see if there's a correlation between the temperature and your sleep. Now, this is all good, except they have anyone's heart rate and their breathing status for anyone who is in your bed. Who's buying that besides the Sleep Comfort people? Who has control of it? Pharma? Insurance? I mean, you immediately go to insurance, but they have everything. Everything.
That's where I'm on the same page with you.
Yeah, okay. Well, happy nightmares, everyone. We'll be right back.
When the government decides to access all of that,
Hey, don't forget that we have Overtime coming up next, and you can only find it on BlazeTV.com or wherever you get your podcasts. Speaking of BlazeTV, though, in case you missed it, last week, Dave Rubin, the Rubin Report, is joining us.
Ooh, more good news coming soon.
Ooh, like how soon?
Soon.
He's
Right now.
Yep.
I want to know.
What is it?
We'll work on it in overtime.
Just tell us now. Just say it out loud. Say it before the song ends.
Not that soon.